Hello, America. So I'm a couple of weeks late, but I promised a video review of Left Behind, the 2014 version, and I have to, despite my better judgment, try to make good on that promise. Couple of things you should know right up front. This is going to be a little bit longer than some of my videos, so if you're bored listening to me, which I don't really know why you would watch the video if you don't like what I have to say anyway, but that's neither here nor there. It's going to be kind of a long video, so if you're not really interested in some of my preliminary discussion of the film before I kind of get into the movie itself, just go ahead and jump 5 or 6 minutes into the video, and you should be okay. First, we're going to talk about theology a little bit, so if for some reason that makes you wonky, you may want to skip also. But so by show of hands that I can't see, how many of you grew up in the Bible Belt? I'm sure that if you're watching this video, you did. And so I'm assuming that you really have no, when it comes to the end times or Armageddon or those sorts of things, pretty much all you know about maybe what you've heard your preacher say once or twice, or maybe you read Left Behind. They were pretty popular books over the last 15, 20 years. And there were a number of them, and there was a kids series, and there have been lots and lots of spin-offs, and there were the original movies that came out 15 years ago with Kirk Cameron. So you probably have been exposed to the Left Behind mentality, which is basically, in a nutshell, at an appointed time, Christ will rapture the church to heaven. There will be a 7-year period of tribulation in which will culminate with the Battle of Armageddon and then the second coming of Christ to establish a 1,000-year kingdom on earth. And that is what is referred to as dispensational theology, from a pre-tribulation mindset. It is the most predominant view in the evangelical churches, at least in the South, of the last 50 to 60 years. The view is kind of, relatively speaking, new, at least in its present incarnation. I mean, the idea behind what most people are taught came about in the 1800s. A guy named John Darby was largely responsible for it. It got popularized some years after Darby in the Scofield Reference Bible, and then it kind of got mainstream popular. Like the apocalypse got mainstream popular again in the mid-60s with a book called The Late Great Planet Earth, written by Hal Lindsey, which I've read several times. It's an interesting book. But I say all that to say this. I grew up hearing this. I grew up believing it. I grew up being taught this. I'm sure most of you guys did too. I read all the Left Behind books and saw the original movies, and really liked the books. Thought they were entertaining thriller books. They didn't really. I mean, there were some Jesus-y moments in the books, sure, but it kind of was more like reading a greatly discounted Tom Clancy novel. Was kind of like what it felt like, with some theological stuff there. But the reason I'm talking about all this is because I have to say, just to be fair and to be perfectly clear, when I start this review, I am personally removed from the dispensationalist theological way of thinking. Um, Now, in case you didn't know this, and I'm not being condescending, because believe me, I grew up in the same churches that you guys do. A lot of people do not understand that literally there are hundreds of different interpretations of the book of Revelation, of end time eschatology, of pretty much any passage in the Bible that dispensationalist theology says is referring to the end of the world. There are 100 other interpretations of it, and the dispensational theology, in addition to being one of the newer ones, is not even the most widely believed. Like Catholics don't believe it. Most of Europe doesn't believe it. It's not really preached in Asia. South America, they're mostly Catholic. It's not. And anywhere north of, you know, whatever you would consider to be the end of the South, it's not necessarily the predominant view. And I'm not going to go into a huge rant about why it's such a widespread belief in the Bible Belt, but I just wanted you guys to be aware that there are lots and lots of other beliefs. The idea of there being a rapture and a 7-year tribulation and an antichrist and a specific battle of Armageddon. These are things that are one interpretation of many, many scriptures that were written over, 1,500 years apart from each other by different people in different contexts. And there are lots and lots. There are more Christians in the world who do not believe in the rapture, do not believe in the dispensational theology, than there are Christians who do. So I just wanted to establish that for you guys in case you didn't know that. I'm not making this up. You can look it up. I'm not lying to you. Most people in the world do not believe that type of theology. It's a very specific theology. It's very popular in the South, which is why all of you have grown up reading it. Now, I'm not gonna go into what I believe. Suffice to say, I don't believe a rapture happens and there's a 7-year tribulation and all. That's not my understanding of Scripture, and it's not the understanding of a lot of people I know. It's not their understanding either. Probably, I would say most people I know do believe that, and that's fine. I don't want to discourage people from believing that. That's not the point. I just wanted to let you guys know right up front, that's not how I look at the end times. So when I approach Left Behind, I look at it as a fictional story with some Christian themes, but I don't look at it as any sort of pressing evangelical message that we need to get people prepared to not get left behind. I don't find that to be necessarily reality. So that's enough talk about the theology. My history with the books is back in the day, back when I was younger, I just kind of went along with whatever I'd heard in church and stuff, and so I pretty much believed all of that to be the books were really exciting to me and all that kind of thing. Kirk Cameron did the original series, which they weren't, by the standard of Christian films, which most Christian films aren't very good quality-wise, they weren't terrible. They were ambitious, I guess, in the sense that they tried to cover the books, which at least tried to come across like they could be mainstream books. Like I said, they were kind of like rip-offs of Tom Clancy in a way, but not as good, but they weren't horrible. And that was kind of like what happened with the first movie. I mean, the sequels were goofy, but that was kind of what happened. I mean, I would say a pro of like the first Left Behind movie is it's better than like Fireproof or Courageous. A con is that it was still kind of cheesy and had a pretty bad soundtrack, and the writing wasn't good, and it wasn't as good as the book and those sorts of things. But it didn't have a very big budget, and in the remake, I mean, Tim LaHaye actually had sued Cloud 10 and Peter and Paul Alon, the guys that produced the movie, years ago, and had been trying to get a remake made for years. So I, as someone who read all the books, had been looking forward to news or announcement of a remake for years. Finally came Nicolas Cage, supposedly a big budget. They did quadruple the budget, but you can't really tell that by watching the movie. I was a little bit like, you know, I don't really have a dog in this race, as it were, because I don't, like I said earlier, I don't believe this to be any kind of pressing theological need for Left Behind to be out there. So I wasn't like, oh, yay, another chance for me to like tell people not to get left behind. That wasn't my line of thinking. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, they're remaking the movie. So I was a little bit like, I guess as a book reader, a little bit excited, but then when they announced Nicolas Cage, I was like, he's not really that great. Maybe he'll give us some Cage rage, and if he screams a lot and he says funny things, maybe that'll be entertaining, even though like it's not supposed to be entertaining. Maybe it'll at least be a funny movie. So I was kind of hoping that would happen. Unfortunately, guys, that's not what happened.
It sucked. And in more ways than one.
Satan is real.
And he probably really enjoyed this movie.
Working in spirit.
He can tempt you and lead you astray.
Okay. First off, let me just say something to all of my brothers and sisters in Christ out there.
Proceed.
Just because Hollywood labels something Christian, or the media tells you that this is what a good Christian must go watch, or this is what a good Christian must spend their money on, doesn't mean you should do it. And Left Behind 2014 is the best example of that I could ever show you. This movie is absolutely atrocious, from opening reel to final fade to black. It's top to bottom terrible. The script is atrocious. I mean, the everything was filmed. The guy that directed he's only ever done stunt work, and he filmed the entire thing like a stunt show. Like there's planes exploding and improbable physics with cars crashing through things, and it's mayhem. The performances are all really bad. Nicolas Cage, for some reason, we don't even get any Cage rage. He just kind of phones it in.
Yeah, that was the sad part. He wasn't even bad. He was just,
I know, he wasn't even...
He was just exceedingly generic.
Yeah, it was very vanilla and generic, and it was just very, like, earnest, and it made no sense. I mean, for those of you who were, like, looking for this to be a good, like, theological, I mean...
There's chit tracks with more depth.
That's not there. I mean, like, the word rapture is never used. Ever in the movie. The R word, as it were, is not there. At certain times, characters theorize that maybe it was an alien abduction, and there is nothing in the narrative of that movie that makes that any less plausible than the rapture scenario. Nothing. It comes across as like a really bad attempt at doing snakes on a plane without the snakes in the air, and a really bad attempt at doing the first episode of HBO's The Leftovers on the ground, minus everything that made that interesting. The writing it's bad, guys. The dialogue is terrible. The acting is so wooden that Russell Crowe and those tree ants could have built that ark out of it. Like, I mean, as a film, it fails miserably. Like, I mean, it's just bad. It's boring. Every scene is people sitting there talking, having debates that are clearly forced and like contrived. The Christians in the movie are not portrayed as Christians. Like,
they're portrayed as bumbling idiots.
Yeah, all the Christians are like really, like, either angry or really like dumb. We don't walk around saying stuff the way the Christians in these movies like talk. That's not.
In order for this
none
movie,
of us do.
In order for this movie to be realistic, you have to go into a Dunkin' Donuts and find a random person to accost. Literally.
That's probably, yeah.
Literally.
The great Chad Michael Murray makes a triumphant return as Buck Williams, taking on the role that Kirk Cameron made his own in 2000.
So much depth.
I mean, it was as deep as the kiddie pool. I mean, that's...
Oh, come on, Jake. He made Daniel Day-Lewis cry.
It was... Guys, I am not making... I promise you guys.
You need to leave this movie behind.
Leave this movie and its theology behind. But that's another promise. Guys, this is bad. I could not make up how bad this movie is. And it was stereotypical. Like, there was this sweet Muslim guy who, you know, it's awesome that you're a great person, but we all know, hell. There's like this midget guy who is every like stereotype of a person of that stature that you could ever think of is in this movie, right down to him being punted like a football out of the plane at the end, and I am not making that up. I mean, it's like there are stereotypes of like government conspiracy theorists in on it, and guess what? Even as an adaptation, this doesn't work because it's only based on maybe the first 100 pages of the book at most. There's no Antichrist. There's no global conspiracy. There's none of the stuff that made that first book interesting. There's no car bombs. There's no like crazy prophets showing up talking about, fire and blood and the end will come in 3.5 years and the abomination of... There's none of that. There's no apocalyptic language. There's literally just Nicolas Cage wearing this strange headpiece, talking about, my wife was right. What if we've been left behind? And literally,
what if we've been left behind?
And literally, that was the movie.
You know what occurred to me?
The end was preposterous.
The whole movie was like a South Park satire of Left Behind. Like, it would have been what they would have done if South Park had just made fun of the first Left Behind movie. It was that bad. Like,
and I just want to stress that, like, guys, I know that there's some of you are like really angry and quit watching this video by now, I'm sure. But there are probably a few of you who are still with me, and you're like, he's right. And look, it doesn't make you a bad Christian if you don't like these types of movies. It does not make you a bad Christian to demand better quality films. It doesn't make you a bad Christian to say that if you want my money as a Christian, you're going to have to do better than that, Hollywood, because we're not stupid. We do think. We are rational human beings who expect better films. Christians really need to start, like, voting with their wallet about movies. Okay? You really got because we're going to keep getting this crap until we stand up as a community and say, enough's enough. And, this movie not seeing this movie doesn't damage any, like, presupposed evangelistic intention behind the film anyway, because there are none. Like, this movie isn't made for Joe Schmo who doesn't know Christ to come into the movie and all of a sudden have his life transformed, okay? This is made for the youth group to go to Chick-fil-A and then high-five themselves on the way in and out of the theater. This isn't, This is made for us to go as a group and then have discussion questions about it afterwards, okay? And pray over it. This is not made for anyone to like learn the message of Christ. That's not what this is made for. This movie was not made for that. It was made to exploit you and get money from you because they know that if they slap Christian on it, you're going to go see it.
They know that gullible people who choose not to theologically educate themselves, and if you feel offended, that's your problem, are going to go see the movie. Mainly people who end up not having any taste at the end of the day, and they're going to come back and they're going to say, oh, it was an incredible film and it changed my life and you should go see it. And then their non-Christian friends who they recommend it to are going to go see it and go, wow, all of my Christian friends really are screwed up in the head because this was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And the studio depends on you to do that. They want you to do that. They're sitting there while the movie's being made going, these stupid Christians.
That's exactly what they're doing. That is literally what they're doing.
If you don't think that's what they're doing, then you need to read your Bible.
Trust me, guys. Trust me.
Horrible.
No, I'm not the end-all, be-all expert here, but I did just graduate from film school, and I know a little bit about how movies get made. That is how this movie got made. No one tried. There was no effort behind making a good movie. ChristianMagazine.com. Look up ChristianMagazine.com and read the 2 wonderful articles that they wrote about this Left Behind movie, because they agree with almost everything I've said. And they're going to point out in much more detail than I did about how Christians are being exploited at the box office and how it's not cool and we should really like take notice of it. And I shouldn't be the only one on Facebook saying this on my friends list. You know, someone else should stand up and recognize, hey, we're not getting good movies. You know, like, you know me, I'm always honest with you guys. Like, I told you Son of God was goofy. I told you Noah was horrible. I told you, you know, which is the same because Noah actually had a budget and a good director behind it. Like, I told you that, like, God's Not Dead was okay, but that it was kind of goofy. Like, I'm always honest in these reviews. Like, people have this weird notion that, like, if you don't like the Christian movies, you're not a Christian.
But, Jake, you're not expressing what Christ wants you to. He wants people to go see this movie. He wants it to move them. He wants it to build a hedge of protection around their hearts so that they come to Him. Stop trying to impede the fundamentalist Republican Christian message, Jake. It might not be in the Bible. It might not come from anywhere but somebody's head, but you're impeding it. Come on, Jake. We need to make sure people turn into Bible-believing Baptists.
It's like a Pat Robertson family vacation nightmare.
Women need to submit, make casseroles, and men need to lead in the home and spank their children.
By the way, Pat Robertson doesn't even believe in like a pre-tribulation rapture. That's the funny thing about that.
You just think you should leave your wife if she's brain dead.
And the hurricanes kill
Jake,
the
I'm gonna have to speak out in Christ against you right now because I just feel like everything you're saying is being influenced by the enemy, and I think you know it. I think you're self-aware. I think you're self-aware.
You know, I'm being influenced by the enemy.
You're shaming an entire
No, who?
Jacob, you're shaming the generation of Jacob. You're shaming.
These are the days of Jacob. Okay.
Oh God, let us be a generation that seeks your face, O God of Jacob.
Okay. So, look, all we're saying is, you can be a Christian and have a relationship with Christ and not check your intellect at the door when you go to watch these movies, is all we're saying. Look, you want proof? I'll give you some great movies with Christian themes. You ready? Write these down. Book of Eli, terrific. The Ten Commandments, terrific. Prince of Egypt, terrific. The upcoming Exodus, Gods and Kings. I'm seeing a trend here. If it's about Moses, it's terrific.
Incredible.
Ben-Hur. Mm-hmm. Passion of the Christ was terrific.
That was really good.
And that was made by Mel Gibson. That raging alcoholic anti-Semite, right?
The Jews didn't like it and it got an R rating, Jacob.
Well, the Jews didn't like Christ either, so, I mean...
Jacob, we all know he was friends with the Jews. Read your Bible.
Okay. Look. All I'm saying is... I know everyone's like deleting me by this point, but what I'm saying is...
They're just deleting you with the love of Christ.
For Max and Michael Reed and like the 3 people in the world who have not like freaked out on me.
The 3 people who read the Bible.
The 3 people who read the Bible.
You can't get mad about this until you go look it up. You can't. Until you go look it up, you can't delete anybody. You can't get mad about it. You gotta go look it up.
And I know that some people will try. Look, I promise I was not trying to start like a debate or anything, so I'm probably not going to respond to you if you like, brother, you're off base or something like that. I'm probably not going to respond to you because that wasn't the intent of this. Like, I believe Christ died for my sins, rose from the 3rd day, born of a virgin, all that. My salvation is not like affected by me not believing this theology, and if you think it is, that's on you. But I'm not interested in having some kind of strange debate. That wasn't the point. This was a video review, and I said at the beginning, if you didn't want to hear theology or get into that, you could skip and watch the video review. I'm just telling you, the movie's not good. I don't think you should waste your money on it, and, I mean, hopefully we're still friends on Facebook.
If you defriended him or me or anybody
Peace
else
to you.
over this, I don't need you as a friend because you're stupid. And whoever told you the things that you push on other people that you've never taken the time or care to look up, they're stupid too.
And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.